Steph, thank you so much for joining me today.
No worries at all. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure, mate. So 4 years ago, I think you and I met. You was part of you still are part of the West London Rams vets team. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, it's for old people that still want to play football and pretend they're young again. But that's been one of the most enjoyable things that I've been involved in the last 4 or 5 years. The camaraderie, the team spirit, the togetherness. And I remember you picking me up from the tube station to take me to a game. And, you know, I didn't really know much about you because you're one of the quiet ones of the group. And in that group, there's not many quiet ones, is there? You know, it's quite a loud group. Yet when we got in the car and we had probably an hour together, you were sharing so much about your life and what you do that I had no awareness of. When we started the From Nowhere to Somewhere podcast, I wanted to get people on here that have done just that have started with something and taken it somewhere, whether it's a hobby, a passion, an interest, and finding out more about the person behind the profession, the person that's done something great, to me is really intriguing because I've been really aware throughout my life that I've not known a lot. And when you don't know a lot, you can learn a lot from other people. And these conversations have been really kind of phenomenal for me because I get to learn from everybody that's done really well of how they've done it. And you see a common theme across all professions, all industries, of how people get to certain places. So that's why I wanted to invite you on, because I really admire how far you've got with what you do. And we're going to talk more about the DJing, the music producing, your brand Tough Love in a few minutes. But first of all, why did you join the West London Rams vets team?
So I'll big up the Rams. You know what they are. They're a fantastic group of lads. For anyone who doesn't know them, as Luke said, they are a brilliant group of fellas. So Boise was actually my assistant manager at Hillingdon Borough. So I used to play football for Hillingdon Borough. I had a semi-successful sort of semi-professional career. And a good friend of mine, Adam Miller, he was like, oh, just get involved with the Rams. Obviously tick over, stay fit, good group of lads. I was a bit apprehensive because, as you said, some big personalities, you know, football can be a little bit, them personalities can sometimes clash, ego can clash. So I thought, I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest. So I gave it a chance. And to be honest, it's the best group of lads I think I've ever played football with. Yeah. Because everyone's from such different walks of life, outside of the fact they are amazing footballers and some of them are fantastic athletes. As you said, they're all so individual, they're so different, but together, the camaraderie, the group of abilities that they all have, it is phenomenal to be around such a sort of inspiring group of lads. So obviously people like yourself, I would never have met. People like Jamie Lawrence, obviously Jody, Rob Wollaston, like Bash, just so many great lads in there that you just think, do you know what, it's a great place to be. It's a good way to get frustrations out. I'm still playing football. I'm enjoying football. Part of a winning team, which always helps. So it's something that I sort of dedicated my Saturdays to, or dedicated my kind of, that's my outlet. That's my go-to when it comes to, that's my period of time, I suppose. So because I've enjoyed it so much, that's why I've been there for the period of time I have. And yeah, I use it as my outlet and my sort of a bit of a social side of things as well, with a group of guys I don't always get the opportunity to hang around with.
Isn't it interesting, right, that, you know, if that group wasn't how that group is, we wouldn't go.
Of course.
You know, I wouldn't travel a 6-hour round trip to play football with a group of lads just for a game of football. There's loads of teams local. For me, it was about getting out my comfort zone a little bit and going to a city far away from where I'm from and meeting a whole group of new people. Yeah. And who'd have thought that I'd have met so many wonderful people that I'm now I class as friends. It's like a whole new family. Yeah. The WhatsApp group, the connections through lockdown when it was tough for people, there was constant things on there that would keep you going, and hence we're having this conversation now. If it wasn't for that sporting environment, we wouldn't be having this chat now. And I think that's sometimes overlooked in life, that it's all about the people, isn't it, you spend time with. It's all about the people that you talk to, learn from, are mentored by, because without people, we literally don't have that much, do we?
Of course.
And when I was sat in that car with you and you was telling me about what you did, it was really interesting to me, right? And this is why, because the industry you're in, you know, DJing, music producing, I had a false kind of perception of what a DJ would be like. I had the extrovert in my mind, the party animal, the guy that's just constantly 24/7 on the go. And actually, you was the total opposite. You know, quiet, you know, the one in the change room would have the least to say, but have a lot of great things to say when they said it. And that really fascinated me, that, because isn't it interesting how sometimes we have a false perspective of certain people and the way we need to be to achieve in something. So when you first went into DJing then, you know, I think you said you was 13, wasn't you, when you started? What took you into that?
I think I used to, obviously dance music in the 90s was rife. That was such a great era for dance music. And I used to listen to a lot of pirate radio. And there was a station called ISFM, which used to have like all kind of house and garage DJs on, and we'd listen to it religiously, sort of try and record on tape packs and have your own kind. I suppose that's what our Spotify was back then, because commercial radio wouldn't play the underground music. It wasn't playing dance music the same way. Pirate radio was just like the go-to for what I wanted to hear. And me and my older brother, we was always into music. He's 2 years older than me. We were just like, oh, want to start DJing. So it was badgering on to my dad and mum, like, oh, I want to start DJing. At the time, you needed turntables, expensive hobby to get into. My family's not from money, so they weren't able to afford that kind of thing. So one day, my dad, I think he went out on a night out on a Saturday, and he was still drunk on the Sunday morning, and he after us badgering him for so long, he was like, listen, we've got a small amount of money for you in the bank. If you want to use that, I'll take you up to Tottenham Court Road now. We'll go and buy what we can buy. So I'm like, yeah, fantastic. Jumped at the chance. Went up to Tottenham Court Road, expecting, to be honest, just to buy like a pair of turntables. Didn't really know what we was getting into. Didn't really know the level of equipment that we needed. But fortunately enough, he was like, okay, what else do they need? So we got some cheap turntables, cheap mixer, and he's like, oh, you need an amp, and then you need some speakers as well. So managed to get a whole bundle for relatively cheap at the time, and that was it. Managed to get a bunch of records and practiced, and then that's where the bug came. It was like, okay, I can make this record sound good with this record. I can time this one to work with this one, and just self-taught by listening to other DJs on radio, completely messing around, just diving headfirst into a world had no idea about.
So can you remember the first time when you was young that you actually listened to music in a different way than just listening to music, in terms of how is that being created? Or was it literally, you know, the role models in your life that stimulated you to take that further?
I think the production, like that side of it, came later once I understood music a bit more. Once I understood why certain records worked well with others, why certain records gave an uplifting feel and other records gave a more emotive, sort of sad feel. So that came with time. I think more towards like 2001, I started to dabble with a bit of music production, trying to figure out how to make my own music, or at least mash up other people's music to try and make sets a little bit more creative, rather than playing the same music that everyone else was playing. I wanted to just have a little bit more of an edge to what I was doing as a DJ. So once delving into that side of things, audio manipulation and chopping things up and stuff, I realized, okay, I can actually make a record out of this. I can make music out of this. And some of the stuff I was making, people liked when I was playing it. People sort of enjoyed. So, okay, I quite like this side of it as well.
So you get all your kit when you're 13,
yeah,
and it's just relentless practice from then on. And you've never looked. You've always been obsessed and passionate about it ever since.
Definitely, yeah.
Was there a time when you start to think, actually, this is something that I really want to do? Did you at 13, lots of people want to be sports people or whatever it is they want. At what age did you start to think this could be my thing?
I think quite early on, because I was looking up to certain DJs that were playing. I was thinking, could make a career out of this. I was in nightclubs from a young age as well, because I had an older brother. I wanted to be around him. I wanted to be around them environments. And at that time, you didn't really need ID to get into venues, and if you did, it was a birth certificate, so there's no photographic ID. I found a way of manipulating birth certificates and then printing my own ones out so I could get into nightclubs, just so I can be amongst the environment. So yeah, it was it was more kind of being immersed into that world at such a young age, where I thought, oh, I can make a career out of this. There's not many people doing it. It's not a saturated market. And I'm good at what I'm doing. I've learned very quickly. Well, I thought I was good at what I was doing. I learned very quickly. And yeah, I just thought, yeah, I can make a career out of this and see where it takes me.
Who were the DJs then you was looking up to through that period?
I'd say they would have come from more of a garage background. I'd say people like Tough Enough Brown, EZ, Matt Jam Lamont, from the likes of Roger Sanchez as well, Todd Terry, just the guys that kind of transcended club world into commercial world, and then obviously the guys that were at the forefront of a scene that I was really enjoying, which was house and garage music.
I remember listening to Alistair Whitehead, Jeremy Healy when I was a kid, when I was in my teens, and I used to, so with me with music, I love the vocals.
Yeah.
Because I love stories, I love words. So if the music had a certain approach with great vocals, then I was hooked on that. It was always the vocals that brought me in, I think.
Yeah.
You know, rather than the actual music of which was being played. So once you're 13, you start playing, you're getting good, you're enjoying it.
Yeah.
What path, though, is there for a kid at school at 14, 15, 16? How do you get into music as a full-time thing?
There was no outlet for training. For me, there was no kind of, like, there was no classes. There was no sort of sessions on how to teach you how to DJ or produce, because, again, it's a very expensive industry. All the equipment back then was limited and very expensive, even with regards to production and stuff. So I would just have friends around to the house, DJing downstairs. I think had like basic setup, had a vinyls, would just jam with friends and family, and just sort of try and do as much possible sort of DJing work as you can at 13, 14. It's more, at that time, I suppose, more of a hobby, not really something that you think could take you to where I've got to. But at the same time, you're 13, you're dabbling around, you're going out playing football, you're with friends, you're trying to enjoy yourself. As I said, trying to go to nightclubs, trying to be immersed into different environments. So we weren't indoors on computers during that era. We're very much out and about, very much riding bikes, skateboards, whatever it was possible. So it was at the time more of a hobby, more something that me and my brother were the only ones in the area kind of with decks. Everyone would kind of congregate to our house. Our house was like a freeload house. Everyone from the area was allowed in. So it was
West
a good
London.
space to be, yeah.
So what point did it go from hobby to this is going to be my job?
So I think my first actual proper club set was 16, 17. There was a couple of venues in Park Royal. They took the chance of kind of putting on me and my brother on a lineup. And then some of the MCs that were on the pirate radio station, they were actually MCing at the time as well. So it's first experience of DJing to a big enough crowd in that kind of environment that I've always wanted to play in. And that was it. The buzz just kicked in and there was no going back from there.
So 16, 17 was your first. How many people was there?
It was a big enough venue. I'd say probably 400 or 500 people.
And how was that for you? So, you know, I touched on earlier you being more reserved, quieter. Yeah. Doesn't mean that you can't apply yourself. Just means your preference is to sit back, listen and analyze.
Yeah.
How did you find it then? You've said to me before that, you know, being in front of a room of people, your legs would go like jelly and it's probably not something that you choose to do, but then at such a young age you're in front of 500 people. Can you remember the build up to that of how that felt and how you overcome your natural tendency to want to kind of take a back step to actually being in the limelight?
I think it's more of proving a point. There's always that fire in your belly where you're like, I have a point to prove here. I'm good at what I do. I've always had that aspect with me anyway, even with regards to football. I didn't get into football till quite late for a footballer in general. So I started playing youth when I was probably 12, 13. My older brother, he was always a footballer. So I always had a point to prove, like, this is what I'm good at. This is what I'm able to do. And as soon as that opportunity came, I think it was just like, right, this is my zone and I'm going to show what I'm capable of doing, I suppose. At that time as well, you had MCs around as well, so it's a little bit less pressure and focus on you. And to be fair, the two MCs I had at the time were absolute giants, big muscle heads, and they're probably more of the focal point rather than me. So I was in my element, head down, not really entertaining with the crowd, just doing what I felt comfortable doing.
And the confidence was in your skill that you had. So you was comfortable because you knew you could do what you was there to do.
Yep.
Did you get the bug after that then in terms of performing?
Definitely.
What's it like performing in front of a big crowd?
It's nerve-wracking. It can be nerve-wracking because I don't ever plan anything. There's never a plan. There may be a set few records that I want to play, but you just never know what's in front of you. So it's always guessing. It's always kind of watching, analysing, seeing what people are working with. Even turning up a bit earlier to see what the DJ before has played, just to get a response from the crowd. And just going with the flow then, just trying to gauge which direction you might want to go in musically and take people on a bit of a journey.
So it's interesting that. So you don't turn up with a set all mapped out. You adapt the set to the audience.
Of course.
What are you looking for in the audience then?
I think it's just response to records. There's always a handful of records that will always get an audience going. There's them commercial hits, or there's like classics that you just know will 90% of the time work. So it's about testing new material, testing new things, and then if that's not working, it's like, right, let's revert back to what we know, try and get them back on side. And it's a bit of a to and fro between yourself and the audience. And
how would you describe the most common DJs that you come across then? If you could describe them in characteristics, am I wrong in my perception of I thought it was a kind of party animal type individual? Or are you just gone against the grain totally? Or is there lots of guys out there like you that's a bit more quieter in their approach but have managed to break onto that scene?
No, I don't think you're wrong in your perception of it. I think it's changed. It has drastically changed over the last few years especially. I think producers are generally more introvert because we spend a lot of time on our own. We spend a lot, what people would probably say, a bit more geeky. So they're not the most extrovert type of people. And then you have DJs which are the big extroverts, the ones that get involved in the party lifestyle and they like to be present on stage and they like to be the focal point of the party. But I think nowadays we have producer DJs. So you have a mixture of both. I think myself at the time, I was definitely against the grain. As a non-drinker, non-smoker, non-drug taker, I was definitely, and again, a bit more introvert than your usual. I was definitely not the what's the word? The standard DJ, what you would actually see, like the rock and roll style. I wasn't that person.
Did you ever have to resist being pulled into that flamboyant lifestyle?
Definitely. There's always, even to this day, there's always that encouragement where people are like, oh yeah, come on, have this shot or have this bit or get involved in the after party. And I'm fine. I'm comfortable. I don't need to get involved in that to have a good time.
Was that a commitment that you made early on in that industry that you wouldn't allow that to pull you in, or was it just how you were anyway?
I was just like that as a person, I think. I never liked the taste of alcohol, so it was something I never really gravitated towards. The drink and drugs thing, again, I think from being in a club environment for so young and just seeing how people act on it, I was probably more aware of my surroundings. If there was trouble in a venue, if there was people acting up, I was always a bit more analytical of what was going on. So I thought it could be a control thing. I'm not 100% sure. It could also be like I like to be in control rather than a bit loose and a bit kind of unaware of my surroundings. So yeah, there may be a multitude of factors.
And what's kind of the preparation, Steph, leading up to a set? You rock up to the nightclub. What do you have a process that you follow, like a sportsman would before a game, or is it you turn up and just go with it?
Yeah, I think there's a small bit of prep with regards to records now that I might want to play. Obviously, I'm producing music, so there's might be some new stuff fresh out the studio that I want to road test. There may be a few acapellas that I might want to introduce because I have quite a unique style of mixing. And yeah, it all goes onto a USB now, where before it was lugging vinyls all over the place. Turn up and maybe an hour before, as I said, just see what the vibe is like, what people are kind of getting down to, and then that's it. Just get on the decks and try and have fun with it, really.
So how do you manage the lifestyle of a DJ and a producer then? Because you're clearly one of the most well-known UK DJs and producers. And you travel a lot. You was telling me, 21 flights in so many days or whatever it was. You're all over the world. Yeah. And you've got 2 young children. So how do you balance that?
It's difficult. It's very difficult. It's great to have a network of friends and family around. Like, they're a massive help. But it's more, I think, one thing I like about my brand is people know my music, but they don't necessarily know who I am, or they don't necessarily know Tough Love to see. So you can comfortably walk down the street and not be recognized, but when the record comes on the radio, people are like, oh, I like this song. I like that aspect of my industry, I suppose, more dance industry, because we're not pop stars, so we're not in front of everybody the same way a David Beckham, for example, would be, or like a Ronaldo now. Like there's a constant limelight on them. So for me, it's quite easy to be able to maneuver through and do what I do as a normal person, because I am a dad and I can do my dad role, and then when it comes to the sort of showcasing side of things, I can then just switch that on and that's it. That's my job. I have to turn up to my events. I have to turn up and do a job like everybody else, and I have to treat it like a job as well.
Have you purposefully created that then, where you're not known and it's more the brand than you?
I do prefer that, because I like to be as normal and grounded as possible, but you can't dictate that. You can't dictate how that can transcend into something bigger than what it is. So no, I wouldn't say I've purposely done that, but I'd like to try and keep an element of that.
Yeah, now you sat on here, mate. We're going to get you on video. So tell me about Tough Love then. Where was that born, and what point was that created in your journey?
So that was created in 2011. Myself and Alex, we met up on the circuit actually in London. We were both playing a similar style of music, as in there was a wave of house coming through what was probably known as deep house at the time, and not many people were playing it. It was very new, and we were both very much into it. So I had a residency at a venue in London, and he was actually part of the door staff, as in door picking. So he would dictate who came in and out of the venue, and he asked to get in a studio, and eventually we did. After a period of time, we got in the studio, connected on a really good level, and started just making music. That was it. Wanted to set up something a bit more than just a DJ duo and production duo. We was looking at maybe like a media hub, because we come from very different backgrounds. So we was thinking, right, should we set up a record label? Should we set up like a photography and videography space and everything? But it ended up becoming Tough Love, and we just started. That was it. The grind just started then.
How would you describe Tough Love? What does it stand for?
It was, we were both very hard workers, and we work with very hard work ethic. So it's very much like we put a bunch of names in a hat, stuff like Hard Graft, Tough Love, a few different names that kind of emulated the sound of working hard. And then Tough Love was one that we just thought, oh, that's a good DJ brand. It was tough for the love of music, or some sort of analogy like that. And that was it. We ran with that. Built all our own logos, built the brand, sort of worked together on a vision of where we wanted to go sonically, visually, like how we wanted to look. And it just took off, self-funded everything and put everything together. So
the vision in 2011 when Tough Love started, have you started to see it come in like to you of what you created back then? Have you overstepped what you thought you would in terms of how far you've gone, or are you behind, you on track?
I think it's a mixture. The journey's a complete roller coaster. Never expected to get to where we did, and that journey happened very quickly, because it came to a point where we weren't. I had a career before Tough Love, and I had to completely stop that.
For what reason?
Because when you're doing resident DJ work, you become comfortable, I suppose, with just being in resident clubs and picking up a wage. But what you need to understand is when you are a DJ, you need to create a demand. So if you're playing in the same venues every single week, or you're playing in 3 or 4 venues throughout a week in London, for example, anyone can come and see you at any point in time.
Yeah.
So you don't have a demand for your brand. And I moved into multi-genre DJing. So that meant mixing everything, not just house music. But I wanted to put a standpoint and say, right, I'm a house DJ. This is my brand. Something's going to have to give, because people, one, they get confused between the two brands. It's like, oh, I can go and see Steph DJing in like a general like R&B club, but now he's trying to DJ house music in a credible house club. So it was just cutting that line and just saying, right, this is what I'm going to do now moving forward, which was scary. and dangerous at the time, but I was confident in what we were doing, and that was it. It was like, right, we're going to focus on this. We're going to build our brand. We're going to get music out to labels. We're going to try our best to make the most of it.
Takes a lot of courage, that, Steph, because you've already got your, like you say, your wage coming in.
Yeah.
You're guaranteed X amount of events per week in certain clubs. You're comfortable. You rock up. You know what you're doing. So you literally, because you created a bigger picture, you knew that had to stop to get the brand where you wanted to get to. And if you hadn't done that, you wouldn't have got the brand to where you have. But I think lots of people do that. And as you're talking, I'm relating that to everyday people that are doing a job that turn up to get paid and they're comfortable, yet probably not where they want it to be. You took that courageous decision to stop. Can you remember the transition from being the resident DJ, guaranteed income, to then, right, we're going to create this? And what was happening in that?
It was so difficult because at the same time we knew we had to earn money, but we had to utilize the people we knew around us. So we still done an element of resident DJ work, but it was more based. It was based around the sound that we were trying to promote. So we were not getting bookings as Tough Love. No one was interested in any of the music,
even though it was you still.
Yeah,
that's interesting, isn't it?
Because a lot of people don't believe you.
Right.
They don't believe that you can surpass what you were doing. So we went and we took some sort of. I'd say they were like director of music jobs. We'd go in and curate a lineup. We'd go in and play a certain sound. Like there was a venue in Playboy Club in London. Next to it was called Salvatore's. It was like a famous cocktail place, and they wanted more of like a loungy house vibe in there. So we'd go in and obviously take a wage and DJ for 4 or 5 hours there, and then that money would then fund us to be able to invest it back into us as a brand. And luckily enough, the owners of that owned a couple other venues as well. And Playboy also wanted to start to bring in more headline acts and start to try and bring more clientele in for the club side of things rather than the casino that was upstairs. So the guys that were bubbling on our scenes, it was very European, international kind of guys. We used the money from Playboy and we brought them in to try and kind of curate nights based around the sound that we were promoting and obviously align ourselves with the guys that we wanted to be like. So the likes of Claptone and Sharon J, I'm not sure if you know who these guys are, but they've gone on to be very successful DJs now. So we was at the forefront again of a really bubbling scene, and I think just timing was perfect for us because the resident work we were doing, we were able to bring in the connections we wanted as well as play the music and then align ourselves with the right people, which then moved on to club nights of our own because another venue in Shoreditch, which again was a bubbling place at the time, they wanted us to bring our sound into there and then do the same sort of formula because it wasn't working so well at Playboy because it's more of a members club, but for the general public who was growing with the sound and growing with the scene, that was exactly where it needed to be. So we took over a venue in Shoreditch and we would book all the DJs and we'd line up like Thursday, Friday, Saturday night. Thursday would be kind of like a classic mix of R&B and soul or whatever. Friday might be your kind of multi-genre mix. Saturday was your designated house night, and then that's where we would play. That's where we'd invite our friends and we'd invite other DJs to come in.
I think it's really interesting that people listening to this may not have any knowledge of DJing or music producing or even like certain genres of music, but I think there's a deeper message here that what you're talking about is across the board in all walks of life and business, that you've had a clear vision of what you wanted to achieve. You've made big decisions to get to it and kind of found your way as you kept moving. One bit funded something else, and then you grew from there and connected to people that you felt would help you get to where you want to, building relationships all the time. Where did your business acumen come from then in terms of we need to get our brand related to that brand to help our brand?
I think it was more of looking at the peers, looking at the DJs that were sort of leading the way in the scene, seeing what record labels they were releasing on, then trying to reach them record labels and almost kind of emulate people that we wanted to either be like or just be alongside. So it's more of being aware of this growing niche and trying to be a part of that as well, or trying to be at the forefront of that with this other group of people. So we did end up start putting records into these record labels' hands and start getting records out there, and then getting the support from our peers who were like, oh, I like this. Tough Love. Took a few releases to kind of get the awareness, but then they start playing your music, and now they're playing music to a new kind of clientele that have no idea who you are, but all of a sudden more people are coming through the door to the event that we've put on, like, oh, I like what you guys are playing, I like what you're doing, play that edit that you made, or like they're getting familiar with us as a brand, and they're getting familiar with the sound that is breaking through.
So a lot of the music you was playing and still do then, a lot of it wasn't just commercial tracks that other people have done, and it was your own stuff, which must be harder, because if no one's heard it before, you don't know whether you like it or not. I have this conversation sometimes with people that sing on the street. They say if they don't sing commercial tracks, they don't earn any money. If they sing their own songs they've written, people just walk straight past them. How did you balance that?
I think when you start, it's very much edits. So it's like remakes of commercial records or remixes of familiar records. So there may be a big record, Robin S. Show Me Love. You add your own production spin to it that fits the sound that you're playing. And then you creep in some records that they might not know. But it's just more of a blend of familiarity and new and fresh kind of exciting stuff that you've never heard before.
Brilliant. What was the one of the most unique environments that you've played in that's appropriate to discuss on a microphone?
I said to you earlier on, my journey has been like unbelievable. I've been put in situations, I could sit here and tell you two hours of spaces and places that I've been and environments. And I'm not talking big festivals either. I'm talking small scale, random London parties, right through to being in the middle of a jungle in Colombia, DJing to thousands of people. Yeah.
Tell us about that Colombian one.
A random booking came in. Obviously, the brand was doing really well at the time. Ended up being on the dance stage of a big Colombian festival in the middle of a jungle, like taken by armored vehicles into the jungle. Yeah, and Shaggy was playing on the main stage, and
wow,
yeah, it was amazing.
It wasn't me.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, it's just surreal to kind of be in them environments. Same as being in Lithuania, being taken to like a private island, but black everywhere. There's no lights anywhere. Thinking, where the hell are we being taken? And then driving through a pathway, and out of nowhere, this massive festival in kind of like a bit of a dome, sort of bold, like greenery area, just surrounded by trees and stuff. And people are there. They know your music. They're listening. They know the songs. Like they're singing back the records when you're playing them. And you're sort of standing there like, how the hell has this happened?
Incredible. Have you ever been in a room and you're DJing and there's people in front of you that kind of, they're famous, they're celebrities, and you're just thinking, tell me about one of those.
Right, so I've had a few of them. So Monday nights in London, there was a venue called Cabaret's Prophecy, and you wouldn't expect people to party on a Monday night, especially in London. But at the time, this is way before Tough Love came about. I was resident DJ, hip hop, R&B, house, just full mix of music, and the promoter of that was very well known for bringing in artists to London. And this became such a hot spot. So very exclusive, very small cap, I think 80 to 100 people maybe max. And Monday nights was rammed from the brim. I had Prince in there, Pamela Anderson, Timbaland, like everyone that you could think of from the industry was just in there. So there's me DJing, and then like to my right, Prince is just sort of standing there kind of vibing. And I'm thinking, how the hell, like how have I got here?
Wow. So every Monday, every Monday, different celebrities and guests would be in there. Was the same people appear, or was it different every week?
You'd have your regular people come in, and then you'd have whoever was in town from abroad, or whatever celebrity wanted to go out on a Monday night. That was it. They were there. That was the hot spot on a Monday night in London.
Who else did you have in there?
Everybody. Like so many people. But then that leads on to another space that I went into. So I've got to be careful with how I say this. So
we can edit something.
So there was another venue in London called Embassy, which was like another hotspot in London. And
do these still exist, these places then?
I'm sure the spaces exist.
Right.
Cabaret doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
The space is still there, but it's not a nightclub. I'm not sure if Embassy does. It may be It may have a new name. I haven't been that way for a while. So a friend of mine was a bit of a blagger, trying to run an agency, and he snuck me on his agency without my permission. So he got an opportunity to play Embassy, which again was a hot spot, and he had another booking at that point in time. So he's called me up. He said, Steph, can you come and play this gig? 150 quid in London. I'm like, yeah, no problems, mate. He's like, I've got this show at Embassy, like bragging about it. So I was like, okay, yeah, cool. Do your thing. Enjoy. Turned up at this venue. Absolutely no one in there. It's a restaurant. So I've come in through this restaurant. It's in a very wealthy area in London. Come in through the restaurant. I've gone down the stairs, gone past the kitchens. I'm thinking, where am I going? Push a wooden wall. Wooden wall opens. Small, maybe 25, 30 cap bar hidden behind this wooden wall. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. So I'm DJing for maybe 3-4 hours. Not one person in this place.
Really?
Not one person.
You keeping going?
Yeah, and I'm just carrying on DJing. So at one point, I'm just left to my own devices. So I take them opportunities just to mess around with new records and mix and just entertain myself, really. I'm getting paid to do it. That's my job. I speak to the manager. He's like, oh, yeah, great. Left. That was it. I thought, that's strange. A couple of weeks later, I get another phone call. Manager again. He's like, oh, Stefan, can you play music for, like, his actual words were, can you play music for the black guys? And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, can you play music for the black guys? I'm like, you mean hip hop and R&B? And he was like, yeah. I was like, okay, yeah, cool, no probs. Turned up to the venue, walked through, go past the thing, open door, sat in the back again. Good hour. Nobody in there. So I'm thinking, this guy's just throwing money away. I don't understand what he's doing. A lady comes down, another manager. She starts screaming at me. She's like, yo, you can't be smoking weed in here. You can't be doing this and this. And I'm looking at her like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't smoke weed. She's like, yeah, you. So then managers come down. He's like, no, it's not him. Don't worry. All of a sudden, the doors open. Puff Daddy walks in. David Beckham walks in. Victoria Beckham walks in. Then, like, I think Timberland or someone else walks in. And I'm literally stood in this booth and I'm just looking like, oh, okay. Now I understand where I am. Now I understand the environment that I'm in. So there's a party there, a bunch of celebrities all having a great time. I'm just playing the music that I'm enjoying, playing like a mixer of classic R&B, hip hop and stuff like that.
Had they been there the whole time you was playing then? Or where?
They must have been in another part
but
of the
could
venue.
hear the music? Or?
No, I think.
Right.
So this guy was using this space to invite like elite celebrities and wealthy people into. So obviously Beckham's come in. He's came up to me like mid-set and he's like, I love what you're playing. I love the music that you're playing. He's like, do you have any mix CDs? But at that time I was producing hip hop and R&B, but it was for another act. And I had a mixtape of that. And I said, I don't have what I'm playing now, but I have this CD. So I gave him the CD and he was like, oh, amazing. Like I said, get in touch and I'll send you some mixes. Amazing. I didn't think anything of it. I just remember it was a Tuesday, 2 weeks later, and I get a phone call. And it's like, oh, hi, is that Stefan? I'm like, yeah. It's like, it's David. David who? Like, do you know, obviously, because I'm still a little bit like, oh, this is interesting. He's like, oh, David, you said you'd give me some CDs. And then I clocked. I was like, oh, yeah, of course. He's like, oh, I'll sort you out some money, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, don't be silly. It's music.
Was this at the peak of him as well, his football
exactly. Career? So he was just before moving to LA Galaxy.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it was that
worldwide famous.
Yeah, that's
straight. Incredible.
So I get the phone call from him. He gives me his PA's details. I send him the CDs, and then that's it. He's on his way to LA. But that place set me up for like 2 to 3 years. It became the hub of like the highest sort of celebrity status, like wealthy businessmen, wealthy like royalty as well. And I'd just be sitting in there DJing and just playing, like not particularly putting myself out mingling or trying to, I suppose, further my career. As I said, I'm quite a quiet person, so I don't really get amongst it the same way many other people would do. But I was that director of music. I created the sound that they wanted. I created like the environment. So it grew from being a small kind of venue into a restaurant, then changed into a club night, and it wasn't legit. Like what the guy was doing wasn't a legit space. He had no, he didn't have the rights to do it. He didn't have the kind of council on board. which eventually became his problem. Right? And it ended up
Wow.
getting shut down because it grew so much.
What a story.
Mm.
So if you hadn't said yes to that guy
Exactly.
for 150 quid and,
Yeah.
and the second time you get asked, you could have thought, there's nobody there. I'm not doing that. Because people do have that ego, don't they?
Of course.
There's no one watching. You're not going to take a selfie of your DJing in front of an empty room.
Exactly.
There's always thousands of people there, isn't there?
Exactly.
But you had that something about you to go back again and again and again. So the next minute, David Beckham's calling you up for your CDs. Isn't that incredible?
I think any opportunity you're given, you have to take. Like all of my biggest achievements prior to Tough Love have been from opportunities that I took, random ones. I was in a holiday in a place called Cos, and I again, the same guy phoned me up. He's like, "Oh, I've got a residency abroad if you fancy it." And I'm like, "Where?" And he said, "Oh, Zante." And he told me the name of the club, and I'm saying, "No, I'm in Cos right now, and there's a club here called the same name." And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's it. It's in Cos." So I'm already there on holiday.
Yeah.
Phone call, literally on the phone box in Cos. And he's saying, "Yeah, if you want, when are you back?" I told him I was back on, let's say, 2 days later. I packed my stuff and I flew straight back out, and I spent the season DJing in Greece. Like, he had an ulterior motive. The reason he sent me out there was so he could take my Monday night, which was
Really?
which was the good Monday night.
Did you
Well,
know that?
No, I didn't at the time. But as soon as I
Wow.
came back, the owner was like, "Nope, I want you back in," and I got my Monday nights back
Did
again. Yeah.
So we tried to kind of get you out the way.
Yeah.
Because then Monday nights was
Yeah,
what he wanted.
It was Monday was the hot spot, and that was what he was trying to get
He wanted
himself
to be
into.
with the
Yeah.
celebrities, with the P.
Yeah,
Diddy's
yeah.
of the world.
That is it.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
When Puff Daddy walks in, that must have been a little. Did the
Obviously-
mix go a bit array for a few
No,
moments? where
it
you
was
just,
it kind of fueled me a bit more to be like,
Yeah.
right, I'm going to show these guys what I can do, because if I do that in that environment again, you just never know what opportunities come from it. Like, it's very much about proving a point every time an opportunity comes about.
And where do you think that came from for you of having that bravery to take opportunities that was presented?
I'm not sure. I think when I look back at it, I think where my brother was the footballer, everyone was like, "Oh, the footballer, the footballer, the footballer," and I didn't really have that space, so I had a lot more to prove. And I think maybe there was an element of that, just proving people wrong.
Why do you think you had an element of wanting to prove yourself?
It's maybe a competitive edge. There might be that. There might be trying to find my qualities or what I'm good at, and that was music. I think was the one which really kind of took off for me.
It's because when I speak to my brother about this subject, he says the same about his drive to be great at whatever he did come from a lack of being recognised.
Yeah.
Because I was the footballer like your brother.
Yeah.
So, you say like my older brother's playing football for England and he's at school.
Yeah.
There's only so much about just going to school that your parents can give you a pat on the back for. And
Yeah.
he talked about on the podcast where that his drive to succeed came from a lack of recognition, really, or a lack of being noticed.
Yeah.
Hence why he's now an extreme ultra runner that, super exceeds anything I could ever compete with. But my parents didn't do that consciously. It's just a subconscious thing that if one of your sons is a footballer and gets a lot of attention and your other son isn't doing stuff like that, of course there's more attention there, rightly or wrongly. It's just the way that it is. And it reminded me when you was talking about that, of that kind of, I want to prove myself in something, because your brother was in music as well. Did he continue with it then?
No, he didn't. He didn't continue after a period of time. I actually brought him back in during a period of time because I was doing a lot of work and I was getting a lot of gigs that I couldn't actually do myself. And instead of handing them to other people that I didn't particularly know that would try and come in and take the slots, I said to him, "Listen, there's a new way of DJing now. I'll load you up with everything as possible. Just go and do what you know how to do." And eventually got him back into it. So then he ended up finding a love for it again and started DJing again and coming into the spaces that I was in and being in them environments and then trying to pursue it again as a career.
And do you feel that you've proved yourself now, or do you feel like you're still proving
I'm
yourself?
always trying to prove myself. I'm always trying to do something, keep myself active. And even now, even with the career I've had, there's still an element of doubt. There's still people that, even when we first started, there was big publications that were like, "Oh, they won't last a year," or like not getting the support from certain DJs or sort of certain radio stations. Like, you still have that battle no matter at what level. I've spoken to people who I would consider running massive record labels and they still hit hurdles or artists that are of a way more significant value than I am, and they're not getting a radio play, or they're still finding hurdles in their career. So there's always a hurdle, there's always a battle that you've got to kind of fight within this industry. It's just about being consistent and persistent and trying to break them barriers and doors down.
And where are you looking to take your career and Tough Love?
I'd like to maintain the brand, maintain a career in it, still DJ, still produce, still make music, because that's what I love doing. And I think there's a few DJs that have been in Clubland for 20, 30, 40 plus years. Don't necessarily know if I want to be in Clubland for that much longer, but I'd still like to sustain a career in music at some sort of level, even if it's just sitting back and making music for other people and letting them go and flourish and have careers that way. Fine, but as long as I'm involved at some capacity, then I think I'll be happy.
So for people listening to this that are kind of wanting to get into the industry, what would your top tips or advice be to a youngster that loves music like you did, but maybe doesn't see a way through? Because like you said, in education, it's not often sat down with a career advisor that says, oh, DJing, okay, this is the path for you. What advice would you give to them? You can't dip your toe in and out. It's something you have to be fully committed to. It's something that you have to really practice every single day. You have to make an awful lot of sacrifices, just like in any industry. That bit of Netflix you want to watch, you could be learning how to produce music online. You could be figuring out the combination of sounds, which is going to develop your sound. You could be figuring out so much more stuff if you just apply yourself to that. It is a very hard industry now. There's a lot more. It's a lot more accessible. There's a lot more DJs. There's a lot more producers. Competition is high. There's millions of records being released every month. So figure out what it is that makes you different. Figure out sonically what you're going to do differently to everybody else, and just keep being persistent with it. Keep putting yourself in situations which may benefit, it might not, but at least it's tried. You know, a lot of people kind of lose heart quite quickly. 6 months in, they're like, I'm not getting anywhere. I started at 13. The height of my career was at 34. I signed my first record deal at 34. So that's a long period of time. And how many hours a day, you know, when you're really in the groove, would you be practicing?
It's endless. Early hours in the morning, like literally so much time and because I haven't been taught. I haven't been to school to learn. Like everything has been self-taught, even from programs and stuff. You can't afford the programs, so you obviously find ways to get programs, or you find ways of working on smaller systems, or just figuring stuff out for yourself. Like a lot of people say, oh, you can't make music on this. Like, no, you can make music on that. Like, you can use what's considered a rubbish program, and cut some drums up and put them all together and make something from it. It might not be a polished pop product, but it's a product. It's still something that you've put together and you've put your heart and soul into, and that's it. Like you've got something there to show.
Do you still practice a lot now?
Not so much I wouldn't say so much of the DJing, but I am always in the studio. I'm always making music.
For yourself, for other artists too?
Just experimenting, listening to other people's stuff, listening to some of the stuff I have in my catalogue. If I was to show you the catalogue of music, it'd blow your mind. Like
really?
Stuff that's unreleased, like songs. I was in Abbey Road recently doing like 3-day writing camp in Abbey Road, so that was like a first for me. That was amazing. And again, it's just catalogue of music, because it might not be suitable for me and my brand, but there may be another artist out there who wants it, or there may be a bigger artist who's looking for a particular type of record with a certain feel, and then that's it. They've got a catalogue to pick from.
Incredible, from a 13-year-old kid to playing in front of David Beckham and Puff Daddy. And I've got one of your tracks actually here that we're going to play now. It's your,
I hope it's a good one.
It's your most recent one.
Okay.
Let's just press play and give it a little
Nice.
listen.
I used to be out of control. I was lost at sea. I couldn't find a way back home, and no help inside. Now I face the truth, holding on to you.
What a voice.
Fantastic singer.
Who is it?
Her name's Hayley May.
Like a fool, still you pulled me through. 'Cause I used to be so wild. You saved me from myself.
I love with the vocals.
Yeah.
You save me from it all, and I'll never run away. Wild, wild. Sometimes I run, sometimes I fight all the flames inside.
Really catchy, innit?
It's a really strong. I'll explain it to you in a bit. It's a really strong streaming record.
So tell me about that. How did that come about?
Again, so that one came out of a random, just last minute decision to go to Ibiza. So I'm signed to Warner Chappell, which is a publishing house, a big publishing house, and they do writing camps all around. Back end of COVID last year, it was last year, where things sort of opened up again. It was their first writing camp in Ibiza, and they invited a bunch of writers and producers to come to like a secret location studio out there. And I was like, yep, straight away, I'm going. And it was very last minute. I flew out there, and they put random people together that they think might work. And that was the product of one of the
Really?
sessions, yeah.
How long did that take to make then?
We was only in the session for the day. Each day that they swap you over with different acts, and you try and you either produce music for a brief, which is for other people who are looking for songs, or you produce music for whoever's in the place. That weren't necessarily going to be a record for me, but when we finished it there, it had enough kind of legs on it for us to finish when we came back to the UK, and then sort of start pitching around to different labels and say, okay, let's try and do this as a collaboration.
And how successful has that been?
So that came out a week ago, and it is just surpassed, I think, 260,000 streams.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Wow. And how does that work? Do you get commercial benefit from every stream, or how does that work?
Yeah, so a certain amount of streams is considered a sale, depending on what you've got with the deal you've got with a record label, and that sale then gets split by whoever contributed to it. You also have something called publishing, which is the people who've curated, so written and produced. Obviously, I've written and produced with a team of people as well, so a percentage of that will go through publishing. And the more streams, the more money gets generated. Obviously, the more kind of TV play, advertising play, that kind of stuff, the more publishing gets sort of.
So the
made.
business side of it, and obviously the more streams, the more
Of
commercial
course, yeah,
value it brings. What's your projections for that over 12 months?
No idea. So I detached myself from all of that, because that's one thing that can really mess you up mentally.
Really?
Yeah. Because you have to understand the purpose your music fills. You have to understand the market it's going towards. And a lot of people, when you put your heart and soul into something, you can become very emotional when it doesn't do as well as you expect it to do, or it hasn't kind of gone to where you've wanted it to go. It hasn't reached the right people. And there's a lot of factors that determine where your record goes. Like, that's one thing I've experienced a lot of hurdles, a lot of closed doors in the industry. So I don't get involved in, as soon as a record's out, in my mind, my job's done. You guys are the label. I'll promote from my end, no problem at all, but my job's done.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me when I spoke to Francesc Morales, who wrote the book Ikigai.
Yeah.
That sold 2.5 million copies, but I'm not correct totally on this, but it was like 7th or 8th book that he wrote. And his advice to me was never write a book for the audience. Write it because you love what you're writing about, because the audience may or may not like what you write about anyway. So you may as well enjoy the process of writing it.
Yeah.
Because if you write a book because you think it's going to sell a lot and you're not really into it and it doesn't, you've wasted all that time. And it's kind of what you're saying there of not projecting too much. You hope, obviously, it does do well, but creating it because you love it and enjoy that process. And what a beautiful voice. Who's the artist?
So her name's Hayley May. She's been very successful on a lot of sort of featured artist kind of records. She has a fair few records out at the minute. So that's why she's not featured on there as an artist, but that was her choice. A lot of people kind of get caught up. Oh, you haven't featured the vocalist, you haven't shown who it is, and it's like, it's not always our decision.
Right.
Sometimes it's their own. They may have other projects that they're more passionate about. They may have other records that are coming out at the same time where they've agreed to the feature. You can't control that.
There's a lot of things, isn't there?
So many factors involved.
Yeah, not just literally making a track, putting it out there, and then you make lots of money from it. There's so many things in the mix there. I want to show you another video now, because for people that are interested more in a DJ, or me really, I kind of, anything that somebody does that puts the time and effort into perfecting a craft or progressing at a craft, I'm fascinated by the process, because I often think that if I can learn something from you, or anybody listening can take something from what you've done to get so good at something, they can apply that in their own thing. And when I watched through your videos, I think you sent me 54 of them, and I was looking at them, and I was getting drawn in. And I was enjoying it, because I enjoy that process. Because if we turn up today, like you're talking about making a track, or Frances talked about writing a book, if I turn up here today, we book the studio, we pay the media team to produce this, and if the conversation's rubbish and all my outcomes based on it being an amazing conversation, I'm then feeling like it's all been a waste. But because I enjoy that research bit, I enjoy reading the articles, I enjoy watching interviews, I enjoy listening to what you've produced. If this conversation doesn't go so great, like the track doesn't get 1 million streams, or Frances' book doesn't get 2.5 million purchases, I'm happy that I've enjoyed that period of learning about someone, because I can't forget now all the stuff that I've listened to. I know more now than I did yesterday. Does that make sense?
Of course, yeah.
And I was watching this and thinking, I've had a few friends over the past that have been into DJ, and I've always watched them and loved it. And I've had a go, and I'm just like anything. You try and kick a football, you never kick one. You can't kick it, so it's not important enough to keep trying to kick it because you don't love it. So I've had a go, and I've been like, I don't know how you listen to music that's out loud and listen to some in your ear, and then somehow
make them work together.
It just blows my mind. Like, somebody might watch someone swing a golf club and think, how do you hit that straight every time? And they'll just say, well, I just can because I've done it a lot. So this video shows you in action. I think it's this one, shows you in action. And once we've watched it, I just want you to break down a little bit of what's happening here. Not that I'm going to go away and...
I'm pretending. It's all pre-recorded. I'm just clapping with that.
Where was this?
This was Reading and Leeds Festival. This was in Leeds, I think.
So many buttons on there. It's kind of I often used to think when I saw a DJ move the record, I used to think, is that just because it looks good? You know.
I think it looks visually more overstimulating than it actually is.
Right.
Like, whenever you see the buttons, it is definitely.
So what are you doing right here now then?
Right. So. This deck has got an acapella on it. Can you hear just a little bit more?
Yeah.
So that's just the vocal. There's a record already playing. I think it is on the far left one over here.
Yeah.
Which is on a loop. So it's just a drum loop. This acapella is being played over another record, and I'm about to mix in another record. So there's technically 3 items being played at the minute, being blended together. Alex is. He's doing some EQ, and he's bringing up the fader on one of the other channels as well.
And you're aware of all this happening as you're doing this. You know what he's doing.
Yeah. But we don't always know what we're doing.
Right.
We're just vibing and going with what stuff is working. So if you see on the decks, there's a few kind of yellow loops going on.
Yeah.
So now I've just let go of the acapella. The full vocals coming through now, and another record will start to come in.
Unbelievable.
So it's just more like, it's like remixing on the fly.
Yeah.
So where you expect to hear one record, all of a sudden there's another record coming in, and you're like, no, that's not what I know, but that sounds great. I'm having a great time listening to that.
And when, you know, I used to think of a DJ, I used to think of a DJ in a nightclub playing and people are partying. Lots of your videos are people are there to watch you, aren't they? It's like a concert.
Yeah, it's that gap between commercial world, a sort of commercial kind of performance, as well as clubland DJing. So there's a big creative kind of thing going on that people don't always realize, but there's so much going on behind the decks, or especially with us, that crowd might not recognize it, but they're enjoying themselves with whatever new music's coming in, whatever familiar music they're used to. It's just more of a sort of visual spectacle because you've got them lights, you've got the big glams, you've got the logos and everything flashing behind. It's a festival, so not everyone is there for me, or there for my brand, but they know that that's the dance tent and that's where I'm going to hear a certain sound of music that I want to hear. So you have your people who know who you are, they know what you do, and you have new people that are like, wow, that was amazing. And you just have general public who've turned up to be in the dance tent.
It's a real performance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, where's somewhere that you'd love to play but not played yet?
Do you know, I've done a lot of big festival stuff, and I do love it. I do enjoy it, and it is such a like overwhelming experience at times. But something about being in a small, dingy, small capacity venue with people who are there for the right reasons, I love. Like, even if you've got 200 people who are there because they want to hear new house music or they want to hear new dance music and they just want to enjoy it without the phone in the air and without just living in that moment.
Yeah.
There's an element of that's missing at the minute, I think. And I am working on trying to bring something like that back.
What's a place in the world that you've not played that you'd love the phone to ring?
So I've not done enough of South America, I don't think. Asia, I love anyway from traveling. So I would love to do a fair bit more that side of the water. I've done America, I've done Australia, UK, rinsed it. But yeah, I think more towards sort of anywhere I haven't been, to be honest. I just love new experiences.
Anywhere that you'd like to relive that again?
No, I like new experiences every time. You can't recreate certain things that have gone on in the past, I don't think. I think I'm very much like I wouldn't pay to travel to the same place I've been. If I've experienced that, I'd much rather it go somewhere I haven't. Like,
do you have seasons then in what you do, or is it
of course, yeah. So Ibiza is obviously a big party season. So your summer months, a lot of people are traveling to warmer climates, like Spain and stuff like that. I held a residency down in Ibiza, actually, a 16-show residency in 2016. So that was in and out, traveling in and out of there. It's a great place to be and offers so much more than a party lifestyle. Festivals are the big thing as well. You always want to be on the festival lineups. There's so many of them now, so competition is high. America, again, when it comes to festival season, they just do things differently. Obviously, everyone wants to be on the big stages, but if that comes, it comes. If it doesn't,
And how does it come then? How do you get them gigs?
So I have an agent, and between yourself and the agent, you kind of work towards places where you feel you fit as a brand, or towards kind of events that might suit your style, and they'll kind of target them. They should have their own connections. Other DJs that maybe fall in a similar category to you try and maybe get on some lineups that they're on. There's no formula, but you kind of work towards that kind of way. And as a team, you kind of put a plan together and say, right, we're going to target this, this, and this, and this. And on top of that, when you're progressing with music and you're becoming a little bit more successful, other people then come to you. The phone line's always blowing up and they're like, oh yeah, I want you to play at this venue or that venue. And unfortunately, it doesn't always work. Like, it's not always right for you. So you can't do them. There is a fair bit of politics in bookings. Certain brands, they run a monopoly in certain areas. So if you play for one, you won't be allowed to play for another. If you play for one, you might then get their festival add-ons in different territories. So there is a strategy to it. You just got to figure it out.
And what's kind of a set and how long does a set take?
Sets are usually like minimum of an hour. Anything up to an hour and a half, 2 hours. I prefer longer sets because you can build and you can go on a bit more of a journey. An hour, you maybe fit in 14, 15, 16 records in that hour.
So you could fly all over the world to play for an hour, really. Isn't that amazing that people would value it?
But see, people see it like that, but then it's the work that has been done prior to get you to the point of being able to play that hour wherever 100%. You are.
The years of grind got you to that 1 hour, because that 1 hour is special to 500 people, 1,000 people, isn't it? That I often think that, and sometimes people say to me they've done a piece of work and that they accumulated X amount of revenue for And sometimes they'll say a short amount of time given, but then they haven't remembered the 30 years that they've taken to get to that point of that. And then when you say, yeah, but for 30 years you've been doing this now, that's why you can earn that in an hour, and they're like, yeah, I didn't think of it like that. Because it is it's your whole life's gone into it, hasn't it?
You're elite at it. You're good at it. Same with producing music. I could produce maybe 2 or 3 tracks in a day, like quite comfortably and quite easily. Get a good demo, get a good record together, and people are, you can't make music that quick. And I'm like, I can, because I've done it for so many years. That doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that I know what I'm looking for. I know the sounds that I'm looking for. I just work a bit quicker and a bit more efficiently than some other people might do.
And can you remember the first time that you got paid a decent amount that you was looking at thinking, wow, I'm there now?
So I done, back in 2001, I put my first record out, my actual first. Again, I couldn't get a record label, so I went and pressed it up. Got my pocket money together, got my money from working in Sainsbury's together, and a couple of friends, and we went to a pressing plant and we got a 2-track vinyl pressed up. And I just remember that moment of like having that item in your hand and just thinking, right, this is going to market now, this is going to be amazing. But I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So I'd go into record labels and that's not record labels, sorry. I'd go into record stores and I'd sell them to the record store. So they might be like, oh yeah, I'll take 10 copies at £3.50, and then they'll sell them for £6. And I started to learn all of that on the fly, and I sold 500 units. Which is not
walking into a record shop.
Which is not huge amounts, but back then that was good. That was a good kind of amount of money to have made. And
so how old was you then?
Would I have been there? Maybe early 20s.
And you're just going from one shop to the next,
£3.50. All the local sort of London record shops and selling like a batch of 10, 15 units if possible. And then DJs will come in and buy them, and then that's how they made their money on top.
I think you've got to do that stuff, haven't you, where you walk in and you're uncomfortable. You've got to try and sell your record to someone that is having lots of people walk in, or maybe not because of the courage it takes to walk in and try and sell a record, because it's random. It's
just the way it was done back then, and they were white labels as well, so they weren't being distributed through major companies. They're just 500 records that I'd paid to get pressed up, and that was it. They're ready to kind of go. There was never going to be any more. That record probably holds some value now because of the limited amount of money, the limited amount of units that are there.
I often think that naivety is a real gift, because people might say, that's not how it works, and you wouldn't do it. I was in Waterstones recently, and I've written a book, so it comes out in October, right? So it's a children's story book. So I was sat in Waterstones, and I see these 3 guys who look pretty important at working in Waterstones, because they was moving books everywhere. And I just thought, I'm going to ask them how to get my book into Waterstones. And I walked up to them and just said, excuse me. And I was hoping that they would go so I didn't have to, because I felt really uncomfortable about approaching 3 guys that look important and saying, listen, I've got a book. How does it sell in Waterstones? So I walked up to him. I said, sorry to interrupt, but do you mind if I ask you how I get my book into Waterstones? He said, you do exactly what you've just done now. He said, but you need to speak to Kate, the manager. I was like, oh, cool, thanks.
And that was it.
And the nerves that I was going through for that conversation. And then, so when I rang the lady that's helped me publish the book, I said, I was in Waterstones today, and I was interested to know how to get my book into Waterstones. And she straight away, because she's been in the industry for so long, she's not naive. She said, yeah, I'm not, you wouldn't have got far with them, would you? I said, well, actually, I just walked up and asked them, and she was really shocked by that, because she was like, and what did they say? And I said what they'd said, and she was kind of, right, didn't think it would work like that. So her experience would say there's a process to go through. So I've approached that guy. Probably nobody approaches him. Like, not many might have done what you did. And I think by being naive sometimes and a bit of courage.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, so this was probably 4 months ago, and I've remembered Kate, the manager. Kate, I just hope the manager doesn't change now, because if I ask for Kate and she's gone, I'm not sure where I go next. But once the book's printed, that I'm going to be doing what you're doing. I'm going to walk in there and just say, are you interested in my book? Have a read. If it's any good, would you put a few on the shelves? If not, when no one's looking, I'll put a few on the shelves. I'll take a few photographs and tell everyone that it's in Waterstones, so people go in and ask for my book from Waterstones. So then Waterstones contact me, for the demand is so high that I'm sure I can get 30, 40 mates to go in one day and say, this book been
Clever.
written by Luke Staton. I want one for my children. And they'll be like, gosh, that guy, I wish I'd have accepted his offer. And I'll just be waiting around the corner. But I think that sometimes they're the creative things that you do
Completely.
to just get you going, because sometimes just following what everyone else does.
Yeah.
My son, who I told you earlier, I'm taking him to
Jiu-jitsu.
jiu-jitsu. He's like, Dad, nobody that plays football does jiu-jitsu. I said, exactly. He's like, what do you mean? I said, nobody does it. So if you do it, you've got an advantage.
Doesn't Zlatan do jiu-jitsu?
Probably. I'll
Yeah,
tell him that.
yeah.
He'll be, if you're telling me he does it.
Yeah,
he'll
so
be like,
Zlatan's
okay.
is karate or something along them lines.
He's a beast, isn't
yeah.
he? And I think if you can be a beast in anything and do things that others aren't doing, just because they're not doing it doesn't mean it's not good for you. You shouldn't always follow the grain and do what everybody else does.
Well, leaning onto that, so the biggest record I had, the biggest success with the one that went 11 in the charts, no one wanted that record. Like, we went to our management, we went to loads of different labels, we pitched it to so many different places, getting to a position where we were having success with like independent club releases and stuff. But that particular record, we saw the crowd when we were playing in our sets at the early stages. We saw the reaction the crowd were having to that record. Like, it was the standout song in our sets.
Yeah.
No one had it. We're the only ones playing it. Everyone was waiting for that record. Everyone we went to was like, nah, it's just not got the legs. Like, labels like, no, I just don't think it's right. So me and Alex were like, oh, F this. We're going to clear the sample ourselves. We're going to pay the money to clear it. We're just going to self-release it on our... So we set up our own record label because, again, hitting hurdles of not being able to get records signed. In 2012, we set up Get Twisted Records, and we just wanted to self-release and distribute music ourselves. So we went, oh, flip it. We'll just release it on our own label. Like, we know there's a demand for it. So, signed it, released it. Annie Mac played it. Every single record label came wanting to sign a record.
Really?
Yeah. But now the record's already signed to Get Twisted, and they have to do a license deal with our record label to be able to sign it from us. So instead of just taking us as an artist, we still own the record, and we've licensed it up for a period of time to a major record label.
Wow.
And again, no one wanted to take it. I don't think it's a crossover, a bit too much of a UK record. They all doubted it. And then all of a sudden it was like almost top of the charts.
Is that your most successful one?
I'd say it depends on what you consider success, but when it comes to chart succession, that's the highest charting record we've had.
Incredible. What's been the biggest fee you've ever been paid to do a set? You don't have to say who paid it, but what's been what number you've been like, wow, that is, who'd have thought I'd have got to that?
I'm trying to think now. There has been some decent fees. But I'd say maybe about 15, 16 grand for a set.
For the hour set?
Yeah.
Wow. Is that kind of, do you have to pay for your own travel, or are they all sort that?
No, a lot. It varies depending on the promotion. It varies depending where you're playing. Sometimes the bigger parties that everyone thinks you're getting paid the most don't actually pay as much. And then sometimes you might get less of a fee or more of a fee, in places where you think, oh, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of the time you have something called a rider, which is what you ask for, drinks-wise, food-wise. Sometimes, obviously, there'll be travel incorporated in it, so they'll be paying for flights and accommodation and stuff like that. And other times they might just give you what they call a landed deal, which is, right, this is the money we have. We'll pay you that. You do everything yourself. So you book your flights, your accommodation, your whatever it is. So it varies from show to show.
So it gives hope, doesn't it, for young people thinking, is it an industry I can enter? I love it. It's my hobby and my interest. Can I make a living from it? Well, you're proof that you definitely can.
100%.
If you put the effort in to get that good, that you become more valuable, because the better you get anything, the more valuable you become to the world.
And the more I'd say powerful, but the more you feel you are, the more people want from you, the more kind of powerful you become, because whether you're an agent or whether you're a record label or whether you're a DJ or producer or songwriter, it's very difficult to engage people into you. If you came to me now and said, oh, yeah, Steph, I'm a really good songwriter, then I'll listen to the music as a friend and I'll give feedback. But if someone who was a significant sort of songwriter goes into a situation and they put themselves forward, who's written for Beyonce or Lewis Capaldi, and they get a different level of respect from the industry. So it's very much about trying to be as big, be as powerful as you possibly can be. And instead of asking for everything, make sure that people start sort of coming towards you and start kind of gravitating towards you, like, oh, you've done this and you've done that. And people's perception changes very quickly when they realize what it is you've done.
And that comes from the CV that you've established through the effort that you've gone to get great and then be asked to go to the venues that you've been, isn't it? So that takes a lot of experience and time. So you don't play that Monday night gig for 150 quid.
Yeah.
David Beckham doesn't call you, and when you can say David Beckham's called you for your CD and you've played in front of Timbaland and all these people, that brings a lot of credibility, and rightly so, doesn't it?
It's all part
of
the
marketing. I think people sometimes want to skip that bit, and they'll see the image or the video of, you know, a huge DJ playing in front of 5,000 people, and yes, it's amazing to have that as that inspires you, that excites you, that stimulates you to want to be great. That might not happen for 10 years or 20 years. In your case, it was a long time, you know, of you doing your thing. But you said earlier, people 6 months in, they think I'm not getting anywhere. But it's crazy how people think they will get somewhere in such a short space of time. We live in a world, don't we, where people want it now. And there's nothing wrong with being impatient, but not to the point that it knocks you and you stop.
It also depends on what level of what you consider success. Like for me, if I was happy with my top 40, I'm like, oh yeah, if I got top 40, that's it, I'm done, I'm good. But that wasn't the case. The ambition was there more. Like I wanted to continue to pursue it. Like if you're a resident DJ and you're happy playing in local bars and clubs and stuff, that's still success.
Yeah.
Like you're earning a career doing something you love. You might not be that festival DJ, but you're not working in a 9 to 5 and you're self-employed and you're working in music, or you're working in music in some capacity. So it all depends on that level of what you consider successful.
Yeah.
It's like 100,000 streams is that much different to 1 million streams? Maybe not, because somebody who never thought they'd reach 100,000 streams might be happier with that than the person who's done 1 million streams.
Yeah. And the freedom it brings you to do what you love every day, it must be wonderful. Like for you to have, what do your two young kids think to what you do? Have they ever been?
I'm just dad. Like that, I still don't think they fully understand what it is I do. Like,
have they been and watched?
No, but they have seen the videos and they have seen certain things. They do say to their friends, "Oh, my dad's this," or "My dad's," and their friends like don't believe them, kind of thing, which is fine. Like, but it's funny because some of the teachers obviously know the music and they're, "Oh, I really like your dad's music," but again, I'm just dad, like anybody. Like they see me waking up in the morning, they see.
Must
and
be crazy though when they're watching you on them videos and you've got thousands of people and you're behind the decks. They'll be like, "That's my dad. He's sat here in his pajamas having breakfast." And
hair all over the place, just looking rough as from there.
And there he is in front of all those people, getting flown to Colombia and all over the world. It's incredible. And how old are you now, Steph?
41.
Is this something that you see yourself doing forever now? Obviously flexing it slightly how you do it, but are you going to be in the music industry for the rest of your life?
I'll see how things go. It's a difficult industry to be a part of. It's not the nicest, but then I think every industry has elements of that, especially within entertainment. So I think there's been talks of maybe doing management at some point. I am still producing, and I said I am engineering for other people, and I'm songwriting, and I'm still building catalogue and releasing music as Tough Love. I think I'd be more strategic with the shows I take moving forward. I wouldn't probably do as many as I did during our peak, because you can really burn yourself out with the amount of traveling, because a lot of people don't understand the traveling factor is probably one of the biggest killers, like for especially health and motivation and mental health as well. Like, you're on your own a lot, which is great when you're DJing with somebody else, because you pick each other up and you've got someone to experience it with. Because when you're doing it on your own, it's very different. You've got that buzz, you're out there DJing, you've got such a high, and it's like, who have I got to take? Like, no one's experienced it with you, the crowd have, but you've got no one to bounce off and be like, "Mate, that was the best show we'd ever done."
Then you're back on a plane on your own.
And then you're back on a plane on your own. You're in a hotel on your own. Like there's a lot of alone time. So you have to be comfortable being on your own as well. Like there's a lot of traveling. There's a lot of, especially when you're going to countries which are significantly further away. Like, it can be a lonely environment, which is probably why a lot of guys, as we spoke earlier, they continue the session, they continue the party. That's their social outlet because they're making the most of being in that
It's
environment.
that connection, isn't it?
Exactly.
So what was the most relentless period that you had of travel and
I think it would have been
performing?
2016 would have been that. It was the 16 shows in Ibiza. It was touring all over the place. And again, our touring strategy was wrong. Not to anyone's fault. It was because the bookings came in at different times and we was just saying yes to everything. Because we're fresh to it. It's like, yeah, we want to play here, we want to play there, we want to play everywhere. And as I mentioned, it was, I think, 21 flights in 10 days, living off of maybe 2 hours sleep. And by the time we kind of got home after all of that, it was complete burnout.
Then you've got to come home and be a dad still.
Yeah, exactly.
Your kids aren't bothered. You've had 21 flights in 10 days, are they?
But there would be their flight to Ibiza, then it'd be back to the UK, then it'd be from UK to Russia, for example, then back from Russia, then over to somewhere else, and then back to Ibiza again, because it would have been better for us to be based out of Ibiza, I suppose, because every week we were there on a Thursday. So
did you manage all of that yourself then? Flights,
so at
bookings?
the time we had a TM, so like a touring manager. So he'd be booking all the flights, he'd be booking the routes, the hotels, all of that kind of stuff.
Incredible they don't schedule in any sleep time.
No, but again, it was a lot of it would have been our own fault from just saying yes to all the shows
Yeah.
that were coming in. And again, they coming in at different times. It doesn't help if you've got a tour planned throughout a year. Like, let's say you've got a year tour planned and you're like, right, we're going to hit up Asia, so we're going to move through Asia this way, then we're going to head over to the US, so we're going to move through the US this way. It makes life a lot more easier. But if, let's say I've got a US show and then I've got to go from the US back to the UK, and then all of a sudden I've got another US show, it means I've got to then go back to the US, and it's a lot of dotting around the world. It takes its toll.
Trying to be a great DJ and travel everywhere.
Yeah.
It must be tough. So last video I want to show you, Steph. This one, I might have got this wrong. So if
Go.
I have, we can edit this out, the whole
Okay.
thing. But I think that this is you with Charlie. But I might be, not this video. Hold on, let me move to the last one.
So that fella there is one of my best mates I grew up with.
Last one. This one.
Oh, Charlie
That's
Slough.
Charlie Slough, isn't it?
Yeah.
I thought I'd had that on there somewhere.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw it, because I love his fire in the booth.
Yeah.
I love the skill of the artists that go in there. And when I watched this one, I thought, I watched it about 3 times. I thought I was convinced it definitely was. Where was this?
So this was in Ibiza. It was at a venue called Ushuaia.
Yeah.
It was performing for Tiny Temper's Disturbing London party. So he had Disturbing Ibiza brought into Ushuaia. Charlie was on the lineup. We've known Charlie for a long time as well, but we're from different worlds in the scene. But most people are connected in some sort of way.
It's incredible how well he's done outside of the music world, isn't it? In terms of, what's his drink?
AU vodka.
Yeah. I mean, is that valued at £800 million?
Crazy. So
Unbelievable.
He's a part of it, and there's 2 other guys, I think, that front it up.
This shows the power of that. Sometimes it's not what you do, it's kind of, it leads on to other stuff. So although obviously he's known for music, he's probably made his wealth, I don't know, but outside of that,
course.
what his music's his base,
Yeah.
it leads to other things, doesn't it?
It does.
It's like in life, you think opportunities come from getting moving in areas that you would never have thought of.
Yeah.
And look, let's watch this.
That was a good night. That was...
Oh gosh, it's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah. But see, even Charlie's persona off of he's lovely. Like I wouldn't have a bad word to say about him, but some people might not like his persona on social media. They see him in a different kind of light. But again, great guy, good fun to be around. Like, and he's absolutely smashed it.
He's worked for him.
He has.
Because it takes a lot to break through in anything, doesn't it? Anyone that breaks through in any industry, at any walk of life, they've had to have been relentless in that. It's not luck. You might have had a few little rubs of the green here and there, but that's ours, isn't it, of life dedicated to becoming something.
And dedicating it to a niche that not everyone has kind of looked into. He gave a lot of other artists a platform on the biggest sort of radio station in the UK with his fire in the booth, and he showcased so much new talent that you might not hear of some of them now, but he tried his best to kind of bring, I suppose, hip hop and R&B to the forefront of the UK and bring in everybody he possibly could. And as you said, good businessman. That brand he actually owned. He didn't sell it off to anybody else, and he's managed to take that brand wherever he has.
And he's done like what you talked about earlier, where with Fire in the Booth now, it's kind of every artist wants to be on there.
Of course.
Because they are on there. If they don't want to be on there, they won't be on there.
Yeah.
So they all see the value of being on there. Where I can imagine at the beginning, it's not always easy, is it?
No.
It's like when you start a podcast. You're not going to ring David Beckham up and he's going to come on it. He's going to look at it and go, Luke, you've got 3 views.
Yeah.
But in 5 years, when you've got millions of views, then they go, okay, I'll come on to the podcast. And I think it's the same. We've got to start with something, haven't you, and get
100%.
rolling. And from you playing at 13 to them playing in front of these big arenas, I think that message is really important for people to know that it's a process, it's a journey. So you've got to love it. Steve Jobs always says you've got to love what you do because it's tough.
Yeah.
And if you don't love it, it's really tough, isn't it? Like tough love as a
Exactly.
as
It's a great
is.
analogy for it. Yeah.
It's a great name when you think about that, because I was dissecting the name before I knew why he'd chosen it, because it's left to the interpretation of everybody's mind, isn't it? That what we love is often tough.
Yeah.
Because it is. Anything that you love is tough to break through and to do something with.
Indeed.
If there was a question I could ask you that I've not asked you, that if you was sat here, what would you ask?
Oh, that's a great question. I'd have to think about that one.
We ain't got that much time to
Yeah,
think
no.
about that. I'm just let it linger in your mind a minute.
Oh, well.
It's often the best question.
Yeah.
Because I talk through conversation, I listen to you, and then we guide it. But I'll clearly miss things that you may have wanted to share or could share if I'd have asked better questions.
I think sometimes the hardest questions to ask are probably the most personal ones. So when it comes to, I suppose I'd ask about the industry. I'd ask about the hurdles in the industry. So I'd probably say, like, what has been your biggest hurdle within the music industry, or like, what has been the biggest problems you faced within the industry?
It's a great question. Go for it then, Steph. You can answer that great question.
I skimmed on it earlier on. I think there are gatekeepers in the industry. So you can only get so far by yourself. I think certain places and certain spaces dictate how your career can go within music, I think. Only because you put a product together, you market it and you sell it and you put it out there, but you need other ways of getting that music out there, or you need other people showcasing your sound and your style or your brand. And if the people in them positions of power at that time aren't on board, then it can heavily affect the projection of your career. I'm very aware of my brand, and I'm very aware of how I came into the industry and how our first few records were perceived. And I believe there was a bit of gatekeeping with regards to where we've gotten to. I do think we could have been considerably bigger as a brand. And I think same as Spotify and companies like that, if you put a record on there, if it doesn't get into a playlist, then you don't reach the masses that you believe that you should reach. So the difference of reaching 1 million people and 100 people is very possible, because somebody has to pick your record and put it into that playlist to say that's good enough to be in here, and we're going to reach such a mass of people. But that's not firing all at once, and all them interlinks aren't connecting, then you're missing elements of how far a record could go. So Wild is a prime example. Wild has come on a really strong record label with a really good Spotify following and a really good YouTube following. My next record that just came out is more of a club orientated record that won't get the same level of success as Wild might possibly get, because it's not coming from as powerful of a label.
Yeah.
So there are ways, there are hurdles, there are gatekeepers, there are things in the industry that do dictate how far you can go. And sometimes I just think people who are worried about that try and get themselves into the best possible position where those doors are wide open. Like exactly like Charlie, for example. Get yourself into a position of power where no one can question you, no one could do anything, and everybody wants to be on board and everybody wants to be a part of what it is you're trying to do.
So even the gatekeeper's got to open a gate. Even
Have
if they
to.
wanna...
When there becomes such a demand for it,
Yeah.
you can't ignore it.
So it's becoming that great and creating that oversubscribed mentality, that demand that's so high that they just have to let you through.
Yeah, or just try and go against the grain of what everybody is doing. There is a set formula that people want to do. They're like, yeah, we get a record, we'll market it to here, we'll market it to there, we'll try and get in these Spotify playlists. If it's not in there, we don't know what to do. Build that fan base, build that core fan base, build the connection with your fan base, like in a way that not many people get the opportunity to do. Build it to a point where it's just so strong on its own that you've got a market of people that you could just sell to naturally and be a part of, like a community almost, that just love what you do and they're supporting at any cost. And then the gatekeepers can't kind of keep you out.
How do you build your community then?
Mine originally was just, it was so organic. It was just releasing music. It was partying. It was very approachable. So like when we're doing sets, a lot of the time we're getting in with the party as well. We're getting in with the people. We're talking to people online. We're communicating. We're like doing our best to help people as well. Other artists who want to do music, like release them on our label, like give them advice, point them in the right direction. If stuff's not right for us and I don't feel I could release a record on my label, I'll be like, but I think it works here. Like this might be a better space for you, a better place. So it's just building that community, building, like, I suppose that respect where people like, I can reach out to him or I can ask him a question and he'll get back to me and he'll give me his time or he'll give me some constructive criticism that might be able to help and further my career.
So much, isn't it? It goes into
so much.
You hear that song on the radio and all of what you've talked about today has been part of getting it onto the radio. Obstacles, people's preferences that are in powerful positions, your fan base, all of that, getting back to people. That it's relentless, isn't it, when you look at it as a whole? And I think from the outside looking in, when you're in any industry and you're trying to get somewhere, you know how hard every industry is. My son asked me a great question yesterday. He said, Dad, which sport do you think is the easiest to become the best at in the world? And it stumped me for ages because I said, son, I just don't think there is a sport that is easy to be the best at the world at. Whatever it is, lots of people want to be great at. However, there's probably sports that have got less participants that give you a better chance. Yeah. But to be the best in the world at, you just got to be on a whole different level. And it's the same with musicians, isn't it? Or records released, that people look at the Ed Sheerans of the world that are famously known, and you can see videos of when he was a kid playing on the street and people just chucking 10 pence in his guitar box. And you look at the people like Habib, the UFC fighter, wrestling a bear when he's 11, 12 on a chain, and I wonder why he can just dominate the UFC game. It's not because he trained in a cage that was all beautiful. He had no resources and wrestled bears. So when you look at that, every journey to success has gone through all those trials and tribulations. And I think too often in life, especially the younger generation, they just see the Instagram style. Yeah. They see the DJ on the plane that's flying all over the world and partying and go, I want that. The question is, do you want what comes with it? Are you prepared to do all of this for that? And I think that's the difference of people that become as successful like you. You was prepared for whatever was there to get to there. Yeah. Where if you actually if you could play a montage of your life from 13 to now, and you take out all the glamorous meeting Charlie Slough and David Beckham and all these people and press play and watched it for 30 minutes and go, do you want to be sleeping for 2 hours a day? Do you want to have to then go and take your kids to school in between flying to Russia? And they look at that and go, crikey, it's not as great as it looks. But to you, it is because you love it. And there's not anybody that does anything that's great that doesn't go through a ridiculous amount of sacrifice. And I'm talking a lot about different industries here than the music, but it's all in sync. Yeah. I don't know if you watched the recent Conor McGregor Forever on Netflix.
I haven't, but I've seen clips of it.
Fights Floyd Mayweather. He earns £100 million, right? So the guy clearly never has to work again and didn't have to before that. And he's back in the ring, training and fighting. And breaking his leg and coming back, and although he's got everything, he's still up training to pursue something that's within him. He doesn't have to, he wants to. I mean, it'd be great to get to the place that you have got the 100 million to test out if you still do it or not. But the reason I share that is because a powerful message that I would like people to hear through this story, a conversation with me and you, is that through all of that stuff that you went through, you've got to the place that you really wanted to, where you've got your own brand, you've got the freedom to go where you want, live how you want to a degree, and do what you love and choose where you want to do it, rather than being dictated to. If you'd have decided to play safe and keep doing the resident DJ sets to earn your salary, you'd probably be sat here now, fatigued, had enough, wish you'd get out of the industry, like people do that get into the mundane jobs that they don't want to keep doing. So from me to you, mate, I just want to say a big thank you.
I appreciate you
for you coming here today. I know you've travelled a long way, and I really appreciate you doing that. It's been a fascinating conversation of so many things in there as you're talking. I can relate to what I'm looking to do and how I can apply the effort that you've put into where I want things to go. And I'm thinking of all sorts as you're talking of the potential in the process of what you've talked about there, the obstacles, the hurdles. For any musician out there, for any artist that's listening to this, I think they'll take a lot of hope and optimism that you can open the gates to get to the paradise that you're searching for, as long as you're prepared to keep searching for the key. And don't always do things the way that they... If you need a book releasing, walk into Waterstone.
Exactly.
If you want a record selling, go into record shops and sell that book. If you've got a passion, just keep following it, because the greatest gift of life is waking up every day and looking forward to your day. And lots of people don't, and kind of... We're fortunate we do, because we get to have conversations like this. Is there anything you'd like to ask me, Steph, before we go?
Yeah, I do. Do you know, I've seen you, obviously, from meeting you through football, and I've seen you, obviously, putting the podcast together and stuff. Like, what motivates you to do what you're doing and go into the spaces and places and talk to people in such a way to try and inspire them?
I think it starts from a younger age, when you're so limited to what strengths you've got. And when you accept your limitations in terms of what you're good at and where your strengths lie, you then start to think about, where can I apply them that's going to have some kind of impact on my life and other people's lives. And I was very quick to realize in my mid-20s that I was really useless at so much stuff. Like so much stuff that I thought, what am I good at? And one thing I always enjoyed, and I didn't know if I was good at it or not, I just enjoyed being around people. Okay. I just loved being around people. And any sports team that I played for, I felt that was always a key part of the environment, not because of my ability as a sportsman, but kind of my energy and my desire to win and my desire to rally the guys. So I started to look at that and think, I'm not good at a lot of things, but what I love doing, and I'm now starting to notice that I'm good at, is helping other people improve their vibe, their energy, kind of helping them come out of that place that they might not be enjoying their life to get them to a place that they will be enjoying it. And I didn't realize that that was what I would do until I started to kind of just think, well, people are paying me now to walk around their office for an hour. And I thought that was really weird when a company said to me, we'll pay you for an hour a week to just come into the office and walk round. You know, I was like, and do what? They said, just be there. And I said, what do you want me to do when I'm there? Just talk to people. So when I started to realize my strengths was when I was getting paid to do something I just thought was normal. But being able to have conversations with people from all different backgrounds, I realized actually wasn't normal, especially when I went into the business world from the sporting world. But when you're a young kid and you're involved in sport, one of the beautiful things is you get dropped off at places and left. So I would be 10 or 11 years of age, probably 11, dropped off for a week at a training ground and picked up a week later with no mobile phones to ring home. You'd ring from a payphone or ring from the coach's house, wherever you were staying, and you didn't know anybody. So the only way to get to know people is to have conversation, and to be good at something brings credibility. So when I would play the football training session, the lads would then want to talk to me because I was decent. So I guess as life moved on, I thought, to grow relationships and friendships, I've got to offer something. else, why would people want to be friends with me? Why would people want to connect with me if I'm just like everybody else? So when I got paid to walk around an office to just talk to people that did not want me there, and I'm trying to find a way to have a conversation, I'm thinking, how much longer have I got of this 60 minutes? It was tough. As I started to do it, I started to realize people, their words, not mine, enjoyed me going in because it was, rather than spin the chair round and turn the back on me, they were like, hey, Luke, how are you doing? What you been up to? And I gradually built rapport with people. So I was tested. And once I realized I could do that really comfortably, I thought, I wonder how I could make that my life. Just by being able to build rapport with people and connect with people. And that's when I got on the journey of, right, how can I now help people through my energy, improve how they feel and what they do? And it took me to this point here that we sat having a conversation, and who'd have thought, I mean, this doesn't feel like a job or work. I'm excited every Wednesday when I come here and sit down and have conversation with people, because I started thinking, Steph, I'm having great conversation with so many people, but nobody else gets to hear them. Yeah. And often we don't talk about anything that nobody else couldn't hear when we sat in a cafe or a restaurant. So I thought, why not record them? So I just thought, well, I'm sat with people. If me and you met up today, we'd have an hour, 2 hours, and we'd talk. Nobody else gets the benefit of that conversation other than me and you. And I just thought, well, what if other people could listen to these conversations that I'm having? Because joining the West London Rams, you know, you've got ex-Premier League footballers, you've got Darren Barker, ex-world champion fighter that's now on TV commentating all these fights. We don't get to talk to them people. So if I can talk to them and share their conversation with other people, they might listen and go, I'm going to do that. Or I can do that. One guy said to me that he reached out to me from school years and said that he listened to my podcast with my brother and it inspired him to start running. And every time he's running, he listens to my section of my brother's podcast talking about head up, chest out, keep moving. And that got him from wanting to stop after 5 minutes to running for 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Every time he runs, he listens to that clip. For me, that's worth it. Of course. It's worth the time, the money, and the investment in creating a podcast if that one person sends that to you. Because my goal is to help people improve their life. And if it takes podcast after podcast for that one guy to listen to that, for me, that's worth it. Because I think the greatest reward is feeling good about yourself. You feel good, you do good. So I know I've given you a long answer there. But
no, it's a great answer.
There's been no real kind of, I'm going to be this. It's been like, what do I enjoy doing and what strengths have I got? And I think in life, if people realised what they enjoy doing and then looked at what strengths they've got, but was very aware of what they've not got. I worked on a building site. They said I was the worst labourer they've ever had, but the most fun. So I brought something. But again, that was a compliment in sense of I was fun. And I started thinking, what was fun? I would play pranks. I would just talk about different things. I would drop bricks off building sites to splash the foreman in a puddle, and just having that jovial would raise the spirits. And I thought, well, maybe I can bring that to other environments. I was a rubbish labourer because I used to hate the work, but I brought something. And I think if everywhere you go you try and bring something, people will remember you in a positive way. Too many people bring a negative vibe or bring something that you remember for the wrong reason.
Yeah, definitely.
But if you bring something and you bring energy, and me and you have that conversation in the car on the way to football, and rather than me sat on my phone or AirPods in, we engage, we talk. 3 years later, we sat on a podcast. I'm learning about all of your life. So there's kind of an answer. I hope that's answered the question.
It did. Well, you've always had a good energy. You've always got an upbeat energy, and I think it attracts. It's an attractive quality for people. They want to be around that, especially in this day and age. It's great to be around good vibes, good energy, which I suppose is a reflection of my industry and the music. And one of the main driving forces of doing what I do is watching people enjoy themselves.
Do you ever go in the audience and watch a DJ?
100%. Yeah. I mean, and sometimes you get the audience looking like you were just up there. You shouldn't be down here. But
do you ever turn up without being booked at a night to go
sometimes,
to a night?
Yeah, not so much now. Not so much now, but 100% kind of. If a friend's got a party on and I'm not doing anything, I'll go and support, or I'll go in and see what's going on. check out new venues, check out new DJs, and still keep my ear to the ground to see what's coming through.
I'd love to come along and be
More
behind
than
the scenes.
welcome, anytime.
One of these venues that you're at that you
Yeah.
think could be great for us to come along, just stand behind the scene and do the clapping and the waving of the hands. And
Like Reese recently.
yeah, a few of the lads loved it, didn't they?
I did indeed.
Well, I've seen a few of them go to different concerts. Like
Yeah.
Jody's friends with Kano, and
Yeah.
sorry, behind the scenes at one of his concerts. But but watching someone who masters their craft or whatever they do, it's fascinating to me. Whether it's photography, writing, singing, sport, I just love watching people that put that extra bit of unique effort into something.
Especially when someone loves it, you see it.
You can.
You can't fake that love for it.
Where do you take your inspiration from to keep going?
I think it's still that proving people wrong. I think you get into a point where it's I love what I'm doing. I like trying to break barriers. I like, even when people say, "Oh, you can't do that," I'm like, you can. You 100% can do it. It might not be to the standard that they expect, but it can be done in so many different ways. I think it's just a drive to continue to carve a career in music, I suppose. There's so many different avenues. Probably a good one for a lot of people to hear is there are so many ways to make money in the industry as well. You just never know what part of the industry you're going to end up in. You might think you'd be a good agent, or you might think you'd be a good manager. You might find yourself working in publishing, in record label, A&R. There's so many avenues that the industry has to offer. But if you're not a part of it, you don't understand what's there. So
Yeah, you can't have that mapped out before you start. You've got to give it a go, haven't you?
exactly.
You might have an idea, but until you've sampled the different areas, you're not going to know where your expertise will lie.
Exactly.
How's the music world changed since you entered it to today?
Massively. Obviously, the implementation of Spotify and streaming services and other companies like that. In one way, it's been easier to get into the industry because you can self-distribute and you can do so much stuff by yourself. But it's affected income for a lot of artists. Before streaming came along, you were based on sales, so like physical sales. Now you're based on streaming, and the royalties you get paid are not as much. I'll give you a prime example of how it affected my first release. So unfortunately, my record came out when Spotify brought in streaming as part of the chart kind of contention. So if you had physical sales on iTunes and stuff, then your streaming numbers would also count towards your charting position. And based on sales alone, my record was 7 in the UK chart. So then that would have been my first top 10. But the week of our release, Spotify stats came into play, and I had no Spotify profile at all because it was all so brand new. So we ended up being 11 instead of 7. So that just showed how much of a difference the Spotify influence was with regards to our release. And obviously that was back in 2014. So it's changed drastically since then with regards to where people focus their energies, where numbers are coming from. Obviously physical sales are down, streaming numbers are up. The amount of music being made, there's so much going on now with regards to the digital world. I think the physical world has been left behind. And a lot of our focus now is solely on a digital world.
What can be the difference between 7 and 11?
A few hundred or a couple thousand maybe. It could have been such a small number.
Steph, thanks so much for your time, mate. Loved
thank
it.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate you.